Hey, it's Philip with G6 Technology Services. In this video, this is a continuation of the previous series where we're setting up a Windows XP and Windows Server 2003 virtual lab. So in the last video, we went ahead and got our virtual machines all set up. We have a pfSense firewall that will allow us to isolate all of our VMs from the main network. We have our domain controller server, a member server, and 2 XP clients. And I think that's about as far as we got. That video ran for about an hour and I ended up cutting it off because it was getting too long. So I think now we're getting ready to start adding services to our domain controller. It's just a standard installation right now, it doesn't have anything running on it. So we're going to go ahead and get Active Directory set up on there, get our member server joined up, get our 2 clients joined, and then we'll just do some more testing, see what other kind of services we want to get running. So depending on how long that takes, we might end up breaking it up into another part, because there were a few different services I wanted to try. So a couple of notes from the previous video, things that I didn't mention, are if you notice in the host area, it looks like our hard disk usage is pretty high, or sort of high. It's about half used. So the reason is we gave all of these virtual machines 100 gigabyte hard drives. And when I did that, I forgot to select an option. Let me just go ahead and see if I can show you real quick. But basically what they did was thick provisioned. Let me see. Yeah, see it says thick provisioned the hard disk. So that means the hard disk virtual image is actually taking up 100 gigabytes on the host system. So what you can do, I'm just going to go ahead and just add another one so I can show you the options, but I'm not going to save it because we don't actually want it. So if you go, so all I did was just, it comes up like this. You just type in how much you want and I just hit save. So what I should have done and forgot to do is you click this little drop down arrow and you change it to thin provision. So what thin provision will do is it only takes up space on the host machine when the guest operating system uses it. So that means if we're just doing a standard installation, let's see for example what we have here. So on this client machine, if we go into my computer properties, so used space on the C drive is just under 3 gigabytes. So instead of this virtual disk taking up 100 actual gigabytes on the host machine, it would only be taking up 3 gigabytes. But the guest operating system would still see that it has 100 gigabytes available, and it would only actually take that space up on the host machine when you use it on the guest machine. So I was just being generous with the 100 gig. We're not probably going to come anywhere close to that, but I didn't want to end up having it be too small and have to figure out how to expand it later. So I just made it larger. So you should do thin provisioning, so that way it lets you have a lot more on here. If I was going to do this, thick provisioning, we would only be able to have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, another 5 VMs or so, because this has a terabyte of storage in it. And at 100 gigabytes apiece, it would fill up pretty fast. So if you're just doing testing and you're not going to be filling up a lot of the disk space, you do thin provisioning, you can have tons and tons of machines running, and they'll only take up space when on the host machine when the guest operating system actually takes that space up. So anyway, now that we got some of that housekeeping out of the way, the second thing was regarding the firewall. So the rationale that I gave for that before was to isolate all of our lab machines from our main network. And just further clarification on that, you can actually accomplish the same thing pretty much just by doing like what we did before with this virtual switch, the lab virtual switch that has no physical uplinks, and then you create a port group that belongs to that virtual switch. And then you just assign all of your machines to that port group, and then they can all talk to each other, but not to anything else. So the reason that we did the firewall, because you don't have to do that. If you're going to stay completely local, you don't need the firewall. It will automatically, just by doing it with that configuration I mentioned, be isolated. But the firewall does allow us to access external services if we needed to. So for example, I had to install VMware tools on some of these machines. And in order to do that, I needed to access a file server on my main network or on the lab network that this is all connected to. So I wouldn't have been able to do that without having this firewall in place to act as a bridge between this internal lab virtual switch and the main network outside. So that's just something to keep in mind. All right, so let's get started with our configuration today. So we're going to start on our main domain controller. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is just pretty much have these all in their own tabs, because that gives us a bigger screen and it's kind of easier to manage. So we're going to start by verifying that I have a static IP configured on here. And then we're going to go ahead and and keys, Control-Delete. So we're going to go ahead. Yeah, so we're not on a domain. I couldn't remember if we did that. It would have shown up under options. And then we're going to set up Active Directory. Okay, good. Glad I took notes. So adding roles to your server is kind of the first thing that comes up. So we're going to put that on pause for a second. And then I'm just going to go ahead and double check. Yeah, manually configured, so we're good on here. Let's see, and then we're just going to check the name. Yeah, so that's what we want. So you should have your static IP and your name set up before you try to make your machine a domain controller. It does not like you changing those after the fact. So we're going to go ahead and let it do this. Now, I think I have to double check. I don't know what version it's applicable for, but you used to just do DC promo in the command prompt, and it would kind of set everything up. So I don't know if you can just do that, or I'll just use this server manager because it looks kind of cool. And I've done this before on another system, and it's worked. So we'll just let it go ahead and scan for whatever it's trying to do, detecting settings. And we're going to just do custom configuration. Typical configuration, it adds a bunch of stuff that we don't necessarily want. So it does do Active Directory, DNS, and DHCP if required. So I don't know if it detects that there's already a DHCP server and doesn't run it. But we're going to not do that right now. We're going to add that later, actually, because right now our firewall is providing DHCP on this network. So we do want our domain controller to do DNS and DHCP, but I'm not going to do that right at this moment. We're going to start with, wherever it is, domain controller, and just kind of work from there. Next, next. And then we're doing a new domain, new forest, full domain. I've just been using lab.net. Now, that's something that I mentioned in the other video. You can make up whatever domain name you want. This is all for testing purposes. If you were doing this for production purposes, you definitely want to make sure you're using a domain name that you have the rights to use, that you've paid for it, it's registered to you. In this case, it doesn't matter. Nothing on this network is ever leaving this lab environment, so you can make anything up that you want to. We'll click next and let it think about it. I don't know exactly what it does in the meantime. I think what it's doing is it's checking to see if it can contact the DNS server for that domain. And then it's going to prompt us next and say that it wasn't able to do that and ask if we want to enable the DNS server on this server to be the authoritative server for that domain. So that is what we want to do. So whenever it comes up and asks for that, we're going to choose that option. So hopefully it will do that here pretty soon. I don't remember exactly how long this step takes. There we go. And then we'll just leave our NetBIOS name set like that. It's fine. Next, and it didn't ask us about DNS, but I think that's going to come later. We'll leave all those folder locations the same. We don't need to change anything. Okay, so this is what I was talking about where it's complaining about DNS. Registration diagnostic has been run one time. None of the DNS servers used by this computer responded. So that's fine because we are not set up for that, and we do not, that domain that we chose, I don't think actually goes to anything. It is registered to someone, but anyway, so what we want to do, we have three options. I've corrected the problem, no. Install and configure DNS server on this computer, so yes, that's what we want. And I will correct the problem later. We don't want to do that, so we're just going to use this middle option. And then in this case, we're not going to be using anything pre-Windows 2000 in this lab. This is only going to be Windows XP, so we might as well use the later option. Restore mode password. I'm just going to use the same one that I made up for our local administrator. I'm guessing that in a production environment you would want to have something different and just put it in a file or something. So we're going to let it configure. It does take a little bit, but not too long. So hopefully I don't have to pause for this. I don't know how long it's going to actually take. But this is all part of the fun, so I'll just keep it rolling. And you can skip forward if you don't want to watch this part. But just so we get the full experience, we'll just keep it recording. Okay, so we're doing some things here. Summary, NetBIOS name, and the folder locations and all that. Oh, here we go. It's installing. So I guess we can't actually interact with this yet. It's still doing something. I also need to get NTP set up. It is currently, I don't think it's configured. And we have, because normally in a domain, all of your member workstations and servers will sync with the domain controller. So we can either just manually set the time on this domain controller once, or we can try to configure this domain controller to sync with an NTP source, which I'll just make the firewall, since the firewall actually can sync with a real NTP provider. I'm not going to give this machine access to the internet to be able to do that, so we'll just use that configuration, but we'll do that after we get this all rebooted. Alright, so it did finish. It's all set up. It's going to make us restart, so we'll just go ahead and do that. And then we will have a brand new domain controller. And I have been surprised as I've been playing with this older operating system software, Windows Server 2003 and Windows XP. They reboot and start up, and everything is so fast. It's crazy to compare it to something more modern like Windows 10, where it takes a little bit of time to do anything. Also, well, as we saw earlier, that Windows XP installation, less than 3 gigabytes installed on the disk. You try to put Windows 10 on there, it's like 50 gigabytes right out of the gate. Maybe not quite that bad, but I do remember having a cheap laptop that I bought just because it was on sale. I wanted to see what it was all about. Dell was selling it for like $99. And it had like a 32 gigabyte that embedded eMMC flash. It's like basically like an SD card, but soldered onto the motherboard. And as soon as I tried to do Windows updates, it ran out of space. That was ridiculous. So that thing is pretty much unusable. I'm going to have to wipe and reinstall and then just shut off Windows updates or just put some other operating system on there, because it's pretty much unusable. That's crazy that you have 32 gigabytes of storage and there's literally nothing installed on there other than what came with it. And just the process of trying to do Windows updates used all the disk space, and it says it can't complete the updates because the disk is full now. I think there was some option where you could plug a flash drive in and have it extend the storage onto that, or I don't remember. I was researching it and saw something kind of about that, but yeah, that's just crazy that it filled that drive up immediately and there's not even any extra software installed on it yet. And Windows XP it was like 2.9 gigabytes. And that was after I installed some VMware Tools stuff on there, which was a few hundred megabytes. So, probably closer to 2 gigabytes. So that's pretty good. And the fact that it can run with, hardly any RAM, hardly any CPU, it's just very efficient. I was playing some games on this, kind of a spoiler for another video, but I've got a Windows XP computer that I got set up to play some old games on, and yeah, it runs great, and it has half a gig of RAM, and less than 100 gigs of hard drive space, like a 1 CPU core, no hyperthreading, but all these games just run fine on it. Things have just gotten kind of bloated over time, I guess. Performance, I guess, is better. You got all these 4K games and 3D rendering and 3D modeling software and video editing software. All this stuff kind of, I guess it needs all that, but yeah, it's just such a huge leap from XP to like Windows 10. All right, so we've got our server started back up here. We're going to go ahead and log back in. And you can see now we do have our log on to option down here, and we can log on to our domain. And then we log in for the first time. Your server is now a domain controller. That's a nice little picture to see here. So we'll finish. And then we can see we do have the 2 roles now, domain controller and DNS server. That's good. And like I said, we are going to do DHCP as well, just for the full experience. So we're going to go ahead and turn off DHCP on our firewall and get it installed on here. So I'm going to pause real quick and we'll come back. All right, I just had to step away for a minute, so let's get back into it. I don't remember what we were doing. I think we wanted to, hold on. Can't think and type at the same time. So I think what we're going to do is disable DHCP on our firewall and get it set up on here on this server. So we'll go ahead. I don't remember what the IP is. All right. Oh, I think actually DPS. And oh, that's right, I can't access it that way, so I have to use the WAN interface. I'm trying to remember if I wrote it down. No. Oh, yep, I did. There it is. Yeah, I can't do this on the VMs because that version of Internet Explorer that's on there is too old and it doesn't work with pfSense, the web admin. Okay. Hopefully this works. Yep, okay. Glad I took notes. All right, so what we want to do is go under Services, DHCP Server, and just go ahead and turn that off. And then we'll go down and hit Save and Apply. So now we don't have that running anymore. And we'll just go over here and let's add a role. Next. And then we want DHCP server. Next. And I will mention that throughout this process, I have had the installation CD still in the drive, or, in this case, the ISO still mounted in the virtual CD-ROM, because it does need to access that whenever you're adding features. Okay. I don't know what that's for, so we're just going to do that. Let me see what we had. I think we'll just do, nope. Just gonna kind of give it the whole rest of the range there. Yep, that's right. Exclusions, well, we kind of already took care of that by, I think you can do that. I don't know if we have to include the entire thing. I think this works, so we'll just see. We'll just not do that. Least time, we'll just do a day. We'll go ahead and configure some options now. So the router is going to be that, which is our pfSense, even though they're not going to really be able to do anything. I think we used lab.net. DNS servers, just going to do our domain controller. And then we'll just put the domain controller in again. I don't know if we actually have the service running or not. I'll just go ahead and stick that in there. Yes, finish. Finish. Okay, so now we have DHCP running. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of double check everything. Alright, so we do have, let me see what's in here. Properties. Yeah, so that's kind of what we wanted. Enable DNS updates. Yeah, that's fine. Don't need to worry about that. And I don't think we need to worry about that either. So we're good there. Address pool, that looks right. No leases yet, no reservations. And then our options we have all set up. Looks like it's correct. Server options. I don't think we need to worry about any additional options. Everything's fine just with the standard setup. The only thing that I would have added probably is an NTP server, but the domain kind of takes care of that. Whenever you join a client to the domain, it automatically uses the domain controller. As far as I'm aware anyway, I think that's just standard. Oh, and it looks like it's not running. So I don't know how. Oh, must be authorized. Okay. Did that work? Refresh. Oh, yep, now it's running. Yeah, I don't ever use DHCP on Windows. I usually pretty much exclusively have the firewall handle that. So I've never set that up before. So we just kind of figured it out on our own. So it looks like it's working. And then we're going to double check DNS, which I don't think we have to do anything. Yeah, there's nothing in there except the domain controller. That's fine. We don't really need anything in there right now. And then our Active Directory. We're going to go ahead and add a user. If that wants to open, I have to do it the other way, I guess. Okay. So we look under here, we have all of our built-in, oh, now I'm going to get like 5 of them. We have all our built-in things here. Guest is disabled. Then we have all our standard groups and then our administrator account. So what we're going to want to do is add a user. And then kind of what I like to do, I don't know, I think there's so many of these now. I think it's best practice, but what I kind of like to do is just initially right off the bat just make an OU. And then it kind of helps clean things up. Just kind of redo our own structure. And then have, it makes it easier going forward to manage things. You could have different sites, different departments, whatever. And let's see. Okay, I don't know why it's kind of lagging on me. Resources are looking okay, but I can't right click on this. There we go. So we'll set up our structure. To kind of help group things. And I don't know that it's possible in this version. I don't know when it changed the group policy. You could have things apply to different OUs. And as far as I know, we just kind of have this one policy that I just close out of that. This one policy just applies to everything, and I don't know that you can really scope it out. You might be able to do exclusions with groups or something. I don't know why this thing is being so slow and stuff is not opening. Well, while we're waiting for that, let me go ahead and I'll just make a couple of shortcuts on our desktop so we can get to something. Yeah, this thing's kind of struggling right now. I don't know why. There's nothing even going on. Weird. That's not showing anything. Anyway, here's our group policy, which they're not really even calling it that. It's default domain security settings. So at some point, they redid this, and you can assign things to OUs and do groups and users in your restrictions. So this doesn't look like it has it. But one thing we are going to do is go ahead, just to make, since this is just for testing, and this is just a lab environment, we're just going to go ahead and kind of disable all this security in here, because we don't really want to be bothered with having to reset our password. That's just like made up anyway. Oops. So we're just going to turn off all the security. We don't need any of that. And that should do that. So also kind of what I like to do is under our groups, we'll go ahead and add a group. And so basically what this is going to do is the local administrators group on all the workstations, we're going to go ahead and add. I'm not going to do it there. I'm going to do browse. We're going to add domain users. So basically every user is going to be a local admin. And again, you would never do that in a production environment, but that just makes things easier, being that this is a lab environment, so we can install software, make changes, not have to worry about authenticating as an admin as we create users. So that's going to just take care of that for us. And this just doesn't exist. I don't know why that doesn't want to open. I do want to try, let me see, I'm going to do show on desktop. I always like to have that there. Administrative tool. Okay, now it's showing up. And then also what I like to do is grab a couple of our frequently used, let's see, this one. Some of our frequently used items, and we're just going to make copies of all of the, oh, that's nice. Make copies of all these and stick them on the desktop just to make it easier to get to it. And then as we start adding things, we'll just add more icons. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to go ahead and throw a user in here. Okay, I don't know what's going on with this thing. I'm trying to right click and it's not doing anything. I'm just going to go ahead and restart this because it's kind of being weird. And I'll just come back after that. We don't need to watch it reboot again. All right, we got it rebooted here. Hopefully it's going to behave better now. I don't know why it was freezing up like that before. So I'm going to go ahead and try to... Oh, I added the wrong shortcut. We want users and computers, not sites and services. Okay, so we're going to try to add our user now. Don't want automatic updates, since this doesn't have internet access anyway. Yeah, it's still kind of sluggish. I don't know what's going on. Alright, so we've got our new folder structure here, so we're going to jump into the users, add a user. I don't know, I'll just do that. Good old password. Don't need to change it. Finish. Okay, so now we have our user one and password that we can use to log in. And we're going to go ahead now and fire up our, well, they're already on, but we'll just launch the console. And I'm just going to prepare all of them now. We'll go into console, new tab. And console again, new tab. And then we're going to move all of these in the right order. We don't need our firewall anymore. We're kind of done with that. I can probably actually shut it off. We don't need access to anything anymore outside of our environment here. And these are just auto logged in because they're just set up off the domain right now, and that's just how they do that. So we'll go and log into our member server. And then we're going to get that joined up to the domain first. We're not going to do roles right now. I'd like to go ahead and do that. And then we're going to go over here and put our domain in. Authenticate, and then we should be domain member. And then I do also want to just verify that we have a static IP configured here. Pretty sure I did do that already. And we're waiting for it to finish trying to join. Yeah, it's doing it. All right, and then we've got it joined up to the lab domain, so that's good. Must restart your computer. I'm just going to double check our network settings real quick. And yeah, we're manually configured, so we're good to go. And we'll just go ahead and let it restart. And we're just going to kind of rinse and repeat, do the whole thing. We'll go ahead and do properties, computer name. And then I'll just start on the other one while that one's going. That's coming back up, it looks like. And these are all still thinking about it. And if we refresh, we got some progress made over here, so we're going to try to reorganize a little bit. It's just an OCD thing. I don't like seeing those pluses there. There's nothing under them. We're going to grab our server and move that. And we'll wait until it finishes. Okay. We're good there. Restart. So I'm going to grab that and move it over there. And then we'll see. Yep, we got our second one starting to show up now. It's still thinking about it though. All right, there we go. We're good. Okay, restart. And then we're going to grab that and throw it over here. So now we have our two workstations and our server. Now you got a user. No groups yet. But actually what we can do over here, make a group, and we'll just call it local admins. And we're just kind of going to try something a different way. It should just autofill, I think. Maybe. Or it'll just randomly freeze up. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. All right. Finish. So then we can go over to our domain security policy. And this will let us manage our local admins without having to go back in and refresh policy every time. So we'll just do something else. We're waiting for that to load. These are still booting back up. These are already done. That's good. So something else I want to do is I'm just going to have these restart again so we can see if the DHCP is working. Now, it should have just done that, but I just want to double check. And also, since we moved everything to a different group, restart. This one's still applying. This finally opened. So we'll go in here and change that. Oops. Okay, there we go. So now that group, local admins, is going to be in the admin. This is pretty much more how I would do it in the real world. Have your administrators and then have a domain group that you have be a member of that instead of just putting all users in there. So we're just going to set it up like that. And that'll kind of give us a group in here too, just so we have that. And if we look at our user, well, we'll come back in a couple years whenever that opens up. This is still applying settings. All right, these have rebooted. I'm going to log in. We need to change it to our domain. User 1, password. Come over here and do the same thing. Let it log in. And there we go. We are logged in as a domain user. That's pretty cool. This thing's still thinking about it. This finally opened. We go to member of. We're now in local admins. So that's how we can control which users have access. And we'll go ahead and actually just make a second user. Why not? And then we'll just leave this box checked so we can see what that looks like when it asks us to change our password. And then what we can actually do is I'll just go ahead and just log right off over here. And then we'll just log in as our new user. You're required to change your password. That's pretty neat. Okay, new password. Do password 2 then. That's been changed and it automatically logs in. So did you notice when we were logging in it had the username that was used before? So I don't like that. I would rather it just be empty. So we're going to go and change that. So it does not show us the last username to log in. And we'll wait a couple of years for that to open. This is still applying. And then we're ready to go on both of these. We have our 2 clients and our 2 users ready to go. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I wonder if there's a policy for this. I just like that icon to show up there. It makes it easier to do things. And then I always move the recycle bin over as well. That's kind of just one of my things. I never leave it down in the corner over there. I think that's because when I was in school, they had some policy or something where it always showed up like this. And that's just how I'm used to it. And it just makes me all warm and fuzzy inside seeing it like that. So we're going to go and look at our settings, our properties. That's not what I wanted, this. And yep, we are in here. So let's go ahead and see if we can ping our other workstation. And it did resolve it, but the ping is not working because we have Windows Firewall turned on. So let's see, this user's not administrator. Let's see if it lets us turn the firewall off. No, it's all blocked out. You must be an administrator, so that's good. And this one should be an administrator already because we have it in that group. And it is. And we can just turn that off because it's just going to cause us problems and we don't need it in the lab here. So also something that's missing in Windows XP that you would have had in later years is there's not really any way to temporarily elevate. You can't say run as administrator as far as I'm aware, so we are going to have to just log off in order to change that setting. And actually, let me see if this has come back up, because I did want to change. I don't remember where it is. Let's see. Interactive login. Do not display last username enabled. Do not require Control-Alt-Delete disabled. We want to make sure it does always ask for that. Message text. Just so we can have that. That's cool. Let's see. All the rest of this we can just leave. And I think we're done with that for now. Well, this finally logged in. That's good. We'll go ahead and check this out. Wait while the domain list is created. And while it's thinking about that, we're going to go ahead and reboot this one, see if it updates that policy. And then we'll just do that over here as well. I think you can just do it from, just do GP update, but we're not going to do that. There we go, log into lab. And then since this one is not a domain controller, it will still have a local user, so we'll probably just go in there and get rid of it because we're not going to want that anymore. We'll just use our local. Oh. So I typed that all right. Okay, must have made a mistake. I have to check on here. I don't remember if we have a temporary local user or if it was just using the built-in administrator account. If there was just a user called admin, like we have on our clients, then we want to get rid of it. And I'm going to probably do that on here as well. So we'll log in. Oh, there we go. Welcome. Yay. Log in as our user 1. And we'll come over here and see what it does. We got that, and we don't have our last user. We're going to log in as our user 1. That's the administrator. And then we are going to turn the firewall off just to kind of help us with our playing around in the lab here so stuff isn't blocked all the time. Shut that thing off. And then let's just come over here. And now we got ping to our other client. And our DNS is working. Oh yeah. We'll check out our IP information here. So that all pulled over. Wins DNS DHCP server is all our domain controller. We got our gateway. Our domain came over. And it looks like, so we don't need to have our domain in the DHCP options because it just automatically puts it in there when it's joined to the domain. So it's kind of in there twice, but this way anything that's not a member of the domain would grab it. So we'll just leave it in there. It doesn't really hurt anything having it there 2 times. And yep, we come back with that just fine. That was a little bit slow, but that server's been kind of slow right now. I don't know why. Yeah, so everything's working. Can't find server name. So I guess we need to set up our reverse DNS. I'm surprised it didn't just do that. Yeah, there's nothing in there. So I'm surprised it didn't just do that. So we'll go ahead and do that then. All right, I don't know if you have to type the whole domain in or not. So let's try and see if that comes. Where were we? Here. See if that works now. Yep, there we go. So I don't know if you need the entire domain in here because it should have populate it. I don't know why it didn't do that when we set everything up. I might have missed an option. But yeah, we just have it here with just like that. Let me see if we can do a refresh of our lease here and see if it populates that automatically. Wait for it to complete all of these. Okay, and it refreshed. So let me go over here. That should just be the same, and then we'll see if this has it. Yeah, we have something new, and yeah, it is supposed to have the entire thing. So we're just going to go and modify this one. Come on. Not letting me click on it again. I don't know why this thing is freezing up like that. Definitely got something going on with it, but I don't know what it is. What does this do? Interesting. Okay, well, there we go. Oh, this doesn't have the dot at the end. I don't know if it needs that, but it did it here, so we'll do it there. And then whenever that other client refreshes, it'll show up in here too. So, okay. Well, sounds good. We've got our basic configuration set up. This thing's kind of having some issues also, but we've got our 2 clients set up. Joined to the domain. Domain authentication works. Let me double check that we moved everything. Then I'm just going to go ahead and end the video after we check this, and then we'll move on to adding other services. Now that we have our basic infrastructure running, we'll try and play with some other things like IIS and the POP3 server and see if we can get Internet Explorer working. Yeah, everything's in here. So yeah, we have all of our basic infrastructure set up. I'm just going to shut this firewall down because we're not going to use that anymore. Let's see. 6. Yes. Yeah, we really only needed that at the beginning. We needed to connect out of this network to get our file server, to get our VMware tools and the patch files off of there. So now that we've done that, we really don't need to do that anymore. So we're just going to shut that off. I might need to power it back up later if we need to pull some other ISOs off of the server. But in the meantime, it doesn't really need to be running. So now with that off, all these things are just completely isolated. And then just as a proof of concept, they still are able to access each other just fine. Oops, we don't have 12. Still able to access that just fine. It just can't get outside the network, which we don't need now anyway, so we're all set. This thing's still loading some settings. So I don't know why these server 2003 VMs are being so slow. They should have all the resources they need. They're not really... Oops, that's not the right thing. Yeah, they got 4 virtual CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM. And well, it's actually kind of using a lot of CPU. I don't know why it's using that much. Well, these are kind of using a lot too. But anyway, that's not really a big deal. It's not that much. So anyway, we're good for now. We're going to go ahead and end this video, and then we're going to come back. And in the next video, we're going to add some services and see if we can actually start getting some stuff done and playing with some things. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.